The Girl from the Village, a novel by Patricia Asedegbega. Chapter 3. Antonia Ikedi observed the sullen girl standing before her. She was pretty, tall, fair-skinned and slim. Antonia had met with the mother first, and they had sized each other up, laying out the terms of the agreement before she had been allowed to meet her precious Bernadette. She hoped this one was trustworthy. The last 5 maids, who the temp agency had sent, had each proven to be a disaster, and she needed to find a solution if she wanted to keep working. Her job at the bank was very demanding, and she had her eye on a management position. That was her goal. She could not be distracted by evening meals and keeping the house clean. Agatha, one of her friends, had advised her to get someone from the village. According to Agatha, they made fewer demands and were easier to handle. Antonia was at a point where she was willing to give anything a try. "Bernadette, your mother assured me that your cooking skills are out of this world. I would like to put them to the test tomorrow evening with the family meal." "Yes, Ma," the girl replied, still with zero enthusiasm in her countenance. "If the family approves, you will be going back with me to the city. There won't be a salary per se. The agreement is that we'll pay for private lessons to prepare you for your exams next year, and take care of all your basic needs. I'm sure your mother has explained it all to you." The girl nodded gravely. It was evident that she was not in agreement with what had been decided for her, but she seemed to be willing to go along with it. Antonia hoped she would not give her problems or run away once she was in the city. They agreed on the time that she was to return the next day, and the girl left soon afterwards. Chidi, her husband, was out with his friends. Antonia did not like coming to the village. It bored her to no end. People stared at her, knowing she was an outsider. Some had even on occasion touched a dress she had been wearing to admire the quality of the fabric. When that had happened, it had cost some effort to not show on her face the displeasure she had felt. No less important of a reason was the fact that she had nothing in common with the wives of her husband's 2 brothers, who also visited at the same time they did, so Antonia tried to spend as little time as possible in their company. Thankfully, each brother had built his own house in the village, and except on counted occasions, she was not forced to share her vital space with them. The children did get along with their cousins, though, and soon after breakfast they were all out the door, only reappearing for meals. It annoyed her that they spent so much time together. She spent weeks correcting their grammar after every Christmas visit. But Chidi had been adamant that he must go home every year to be with his family. They had been doing so for the 10 years of their marriage. She had never met her father-in-law, as he had long since passed away, but Chidi's mother had died just 2 years earlier, and she had not approved of Antonia at any point before her death. On her part, Antonia had never forgiven her for trying to matchmake Chidi with another girl whilst they were dating. It was evident that his mother thought the girl would make a better wife because she was from the same village, would respect their culture, and knew how to cook, a skill that the older woman had considered to be of great value in the women her sons were to take as wives. Instead, he had gone ahead to marry the city girl who brought bottled water with her each time she came to visit. Antonia shook her head, trying to drive away the bitter memories that took residence in her mind every time she was in the village. She decided to go to the market to buy the ingredients for Chidi's favourite soup. That would be Bernadette's test. Different tribes had variations of that soup, and no matter how hard she tried, Antonia never seemed to get any of the versions right. She braced herself to face people stopping her with the words, "Ah, Chidi's wife." That was what she became whenever she was in that village. She sighed. It was what she was, of course. It was just that in her other life, she was much more than that, and had a whole other identity. It was a market day, and so stalls were put up with fresh produce. She drove there and parked nearby. People from neighbouring villages came to buy and sell, as well as seasonal travellers on their way somewhere. Fresh produce was highly valued by most people, but Antonia preferred buying directly from shops and supermarkets where everything was packaged with fixed prices. There was another thing. In the village, it was expected that one would bargain, and that was something that really bored her. Antonia knew some sellers upped their prices when she approached, but it didn't bother her. She just wanted to be done and return to the quiet of her fortress. She had brought most of the things she needed from the city to avoid making trips to the market. But for Bernadette's test, she wanted fresh vegetables, fish and meat. She went from stall to stall, noises of happy chatter inundating her as well as shouts from the sellers, drawing attention to their wares. "Antonia, what a surprise! I had no idea you were coming today, or I'd have asked you for a ride." She looked up into the smiling face of Bridget, the wife of Ikechukwu, Chidi's younger brother. She had spoken to Antonio in Igbo, the language everyone spoke in the village. That was yet another thing. Nobody spoke in English there if they could help it. She had tried to address Bernadette in English, but the girl had replied to her in Igbo, forcing her to continue the conversation in it. It was no wonder she failed her exams if she was not fluent in the official language of the country. She returned the smile of her sister-in-law and murmured something non-committal, hoping she would take the hint, but Bridget seemed to have other plans. "I've finished shopping, so I'll wait for you and we can go back together. I've barely seen you since you arrived. How have you been?" Bridget asked as she observed her with some interest. Antonia was well aware of the opinion her husband's family had of her. "Oh, you know how it is, especially with a 3-year-old, she replied. "The day seems not to have enough hours. You look good." Bridget beamed at the compliment. She was a cheerful, plump woman when she wasn't pregnant, which she was at the moment. She had taken the eating for 2 quite seriously, Antonia thought as she sized up the other woman critically. "I'm feeling much better now and no longer having morning sickness, so I've started enjoying this pregnancy," Bridget replied. Antonia refrained from asking what there was to enjoy in a pregnancy, but she knew Bridget would respond with the words, "It's a beautiful process we women have been blessed with." The 2 women could not be more different if they purposely tried to be. Bridget chatted on as she walked with her to the next stall. "I heard Charity's daughter will be going back with you. You've made an excellent choice. Charity's a good, devout Catholic woman and has brought up her 5 children single-handedly." Antonia smiled. Bridget, her self-imposed companion, was also a devout Catholic, so that for her was the number 1 criterion to consider when making almost every decision in her life, unlike Antonia herself, who had been a Baptist before her marriage to Chidi. "News travels fast around here. I'm yet to make a final decision, and will do so after she cooks for the family tomorrow evening." "Count on our presence to help you judge her cooking. At what time should we be there?" Bridget asked, a wide grin on her face. Antonia stopped and looked at her sister-in-law in horror, unable to find an appropriate reply to stop the impending visit. Even after belonging to the Akidi family for all these years, she had still not come up with a suitable reply to the question when it was asked on numerous occasions for their company to be imposed on her. To stay up to date with Patricia Asedegbega's work, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications.